It was supposed to be just another quiet day, a simple stop at the local college campus to deliver his resume to the Veteran Outreach Center. He didn't expect to become the center of a scene, the kind that changes the direction of lives in the blink of an eye. The wind tugged at his sleeves as he stepped onto the courtyard, his boots clicking softly against the stone pavement, his shoulders still carrying the weight of deployments and memories he rarely spoke about. As he adjusted the worn strap of his backpack, a sharp voice sliced through the air, cruel, mocking, entitled, a voice that belonged to a young man in a varsity jacket, surrounded by a group of students frozen in awkward silence, and in front of him stood a girl, blonde, visibly shaken, her hands clutched around a leather bag, tears clinging to her lashes as the boy sneered and taunted her for something she hadn't even done. The crowd watched, but no one stepped in. Until he did. Instinct more than reason pulled him forward. The soldier, a single dad who'd seen war, grief, and loneliness, couldn't just stand there. He stepped between the bully and the girl with the quiet authority of someone who'd faced far greater threats. And in that moment, the world paused. If you believe in standing up for others, in second chances, and in the power of simple kindness, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe to Kindness Corner. You are the reason we can keep sharing stories that inspire hope and courage. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't need to. The way he stood, calm, unmoved, made even the bully hesitate. The boy stuttered something about minding his own business, about not knowing who she was. But the soldier, Daniel Hayes, wasn't interested in credentials or status. He looked at the girl trembling behind him and simply said, "You okay?" She nodded barely. The crowd began to disperse, ashamed, as the young man in the varsity jacket backed away, red-faced and fuming, but not brave enough to do anything more. Daniel turned slightly, ensuring the girl was steady on her feet. She looked no older than his daughter would have been had she lived. And just like that, he walked away, unaware that this moment, this act of quiet defiance, would ripple far beyond anything he could imagine. Daniel was a 38-year-old single dad, a former Army Ranger, recently honorably discharged after a decade of service that had taken pieces of him with every tour. He had lost his wife to cancer when their daughter was just a baby, and then he lost her too 5 years later to a rare heart condition. There was no battlefield more brutal than that hospital room, and since then, he had walked through life with a quiet emptiness, surviving but never really living. Now, back in civilian life, he was struggling to find work, to find meaning, to find home in a world that had moved on without him. He spent his mornings applying for security jobs, his afternoons volunteering at a youth shelter, and his nights alone in a tiny rented room above a diner. The next morning, he received a call from a number he didn't recognize. A woman's voice, professional and calm, asked him to come to the Belcrest Corporate Tower. Confused, he asked why. "It's regarding your act of kindness yesterday," she said simply. He hesitated, but curiosity got the better of him. When he arrived, he was escorted through polished marble halls and into a glass office that overlooked the city skyline. Behind the desk sat a man in his 50s, impeccably dressed with the air of someone used to being in control, and beside him the same girl. Only this time, she looked nothing like the frightened college student from yesterday. She looked composed, confident, but her eyes still held that gratitude. "This is my daughter, Amelia," the man said, "and I am Thomas Belcrest, CEO of Belcrest Industries." Daniel blinked. He had just casually defended the daughter of one of the city's most powerful men. "She told me what happened," Thomas continued, his voice heavy with emotion. "No one else stepped in. But you did. You didn't know who she was. You didn't ask for anything. You just acted." Daniel shifted uncomfortably, brushing off the praise. "It was the right thing to do," he muttered. But Thomas was not finished. He stood and extended his hand. "I want to offer you a job, head of security for our entire corporate campus." Daniel looked at him in disbelief. "Sir, I don't even have a suit. I've been living off savings and odd jobs. I don't think I'm—" "You're exactly what we need," Thomas said. "Someone with integrity." That's when Amelia stood and walked around the desk. Her eyes searched his. "You reminded me of my brother," she said quietly. "He died in Afghanistan 3 years ago. You made me feel safe. I haven't felt that in a long time." Her voice trembled slightly. Daniel felt a lump rise in his throat. He accepted the job, not for the money, Not for the title, but because maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something real. A second chance not just for a job, but for purpose, for healing, for belonging. Over the next few weeks, Daniel found himself adjusting to a life that felt both foreign and familiar. The Belcrest corporate campus was sprawling, a sleek collection of modern buildings pulsing with ambition and innovation. His role as head of security gave him structure again, something he hadn't realized how desperately he needed. He woke up early, ironed his uniform, reviewed schedules, trained younger guards, and ensured the premises were safe and sound. But the job quickly became more than just security. It became human. He remembered faces, remembered names, held open doors, helped a new intern find her missing car keys, guided an elderly client to the right elevator. At night, he'd sit in the security office, watching the monitors quietly, sometimes sipping coffee as the sun dipped behind the skyline, wondering if this place, this version of life, might finally be a home. Amelia began showing up more often, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She'd swing by the security office and drop off a coffee or some cookies she claimed were extras from the executive lounge. "Too fancy for me," she'd laugh, setting them on his desk. At first, Daniel kept it strictly professional. After all, she was the CEO's daughter. But over time, something unspoken began to grow between them. Not romance, not yet, but recognition. Two people who had seen too much, lost too much, and somehow still stood tall. She'd ask him questions about his time overseas. He'd ask her how she handled the pressure of growing up in the spotlight. Slowly, stories poured out. His daughter's laugh, her brother's letters from the front lines, the silence that follows grief when everyone else moves on. One day, after a particularly stressful board meeting, Amelia confided in him outside the building. "Everyone expects me to be perfect," she said, her voice small for the first time in weeks. "But I'm scared all the time, Daniel. Scared I'll ruin what my dad built. Scared I'm not enough." Daniel looked at her, really looked, and saw a young woman who was supposed to have it all, but was drowning in pressure no one could see. He didn't give a pep talk, didn't quote motivational slogans. He simply said, "Then don't be perfect, just be real." And something in her cracked open. That was the moment she stopped calling him Mr. Hayes. But not everyone was happy about his presence, especially not Grant, the same varsity jacket wearing bully who had humiliated Amelia weeks earlier. He was the son of a senior investor, and although his behavior had been addressed quietly, he remained in the company as part of a mentorship program. Grant saw Daniel's rise as an insult, a charity case being treated like royalty. So he watched, he schemed, and he waited. Then came the gala. The annual Belcrest Foundation Gala was a glitzy affair, attended by business elites, politicians, and celebrities. Amelia had personally invited Daniel, insisting he be there not as staff but as a guest. He borrowed a suit from a coworker, awkwardly adjusting the cuffs, feeling out of place under the crystal chandeliers. But when Amelia walked in wearing a silver gown, eyes shimmering under the lights, everything around him softened. She smiled when she saw him. "You clean up well," she teased. "You too," he replied, and something in his voice caught, like the beginning of a confession. But that moment shattered when Grant showed up drunk and loud, laughing too hard, brushing past people with forced charm. He spotted Amelia and made his way over, spewing thinly veiled insults masked as jokes. Daniel stepped forward, calm but firm, placing himself between them. "That's enough," he said. Grant smirked. "Oh, right, the hero, the bodyguard with baggage. Tell me, do you cry at night thinking about your dead family?" Silence fell over the crowd. Something deep and old flared in Daniel's eyes. But he didn't swing. He didn't shout. He simply said, "Leave." And that restraint, that quiet dignity, it roared louder than violence ever could. Security escorted Grant out. He was removed from the mentorship program days later. The fallout didn't end there. Word of what happened reached the media. But this time it wasn't scandal. It was admiration. A viral video taken by a staff member captured Daniel calmly de-escalating the confrontation. The internet erupted with praise. Real masculinity. A soldier's grace. Why don't we hear more stories like this? Daniel's past, once a shadow, now became a source of inspiration. News outlets requested interviews. A veterans charity offered him a spokesperson role. Job offers rolled in. But Daniel stayed. He chose Belcrest. He chose the quiet rhythm of duty. And slowly he began choosing himself again. And Amelia, she kept showing up, with coffee, with laughter, with long walks around the campus after hours when the city lights blinked like distant stars. They talked about dreams, regrets, futures. One night, sitting by the fountain in the garden behind the building, she said, "I don't feel alone anymore." And for the first time in a decade, neither did he. If this story has touched your heart in any way, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to Kindness Corner, and leave a comment. Your words keep us going. Your kindness spreads further than you think. Let's remind the world how powerful decency can be. Special request before the ending. Comment below. What would you have done if you saw someone being bullied in public? Let's inspire each other with stories of courage, empathy, and silent heroes.